The sun was sinking low behind the red cliffs of Arizona, its fire spreading across the sky like spilled whiskey. The land stretched wide and empty, a world of dust, stone, and silence broken only by the whisper of the wind through the cactus spines. Out there, on the edge of nowhere, a lone cowboy rode his horse slow and steady. His name was Luke Carter, a man of the frontier, broad-shouldered, weathered, and carrying a past he never spoke of. Every mile he rode, the sound of his horse's hooves echoed against the lonely canyon walls, reminding him how far he'd come and how little he had left. Luke wasn't looking for trouble. He wasn't looking for anyone. But the desert has a way of throwing souls together, especially the lost ones. And that evening, as the horizon turned crimson, he saw something unusual ahead. A flicker of movement. A shadow between the rocks. He pulled the reins tight, his instincts sharp. Out here, shadows could mean a lot of things: a wounded deer, a hiding outlaw, or something far more dangerous. Then he heard it, a voice. Soft. Faint. A woman's voice. Trembling through the dry air. "Help, please." Luke slid off his horse and crouched low, his hand resting on the revolver at his side. He followed the sound carefully until he saw her, an Apache woman. Maybe mid-20s, dressed in a torn buckskin outfit. Dust and sweat streaked across her face. Her long black hair tangled with wind and blood. She was trying to lift a heavy wooden crate, long and rough, almost as tall as her. The thing looked like it belonged on a wagon, not carried by one person. When she saw Luke, she stepped back, wary but desperate. "Stay back, cowboy," she said, her accent strong but her voice shaking. "This is Apache land." Luke raised his hands in peace. "Easy there, ma'am. You look hurt." She tried again to lift the crate, groaning under its weight. "It's too long and hard. How can cowboys carry this?" Luke couldn't help but let a half-smile cross his sunburned face. "Well, depends what's inside. Mind if I take a look?" "No," she snapped quickly, clutching the crate protectively. "It's sacred. I must take it to the mountain before nightfall." That word, sacred, carried weight in her voice. Luke had spent enough time near Apache territory to know not to joke about such things. Still, he could see she was bleeding from her arm and her strength was fading. The crate wasn't going anywhere without help. He stepped forward slowly. "You're gonna die trying to drag that thing alone. Let me help you carry it." Her dark eyes studied him, cautious and full of pride. Why would a white cowboy help an Apache woman? Luke adjusted his hat and looked out over the horizon. "Because the desert don't care what color your skin is. It'll bury us both just the same if we don't move fast." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, finally, she nodded. "Fine. But don't open it. Swear it." "I swear," Luke said, and together they began lifting the crate onto the horse. It was heavier than it looked, solid and cold. As if something ancient was sealed inside. As they worked, the last light began to fade. Coyotes howled from the distant ridges. The woman moved with urgency, constantly glancing toward the mountains. "We must reach the sacred stones before the moon rises," she said. "They will come for it." "They?" Luke asked, tightening the ropes around the crate. She didn't answer, only whispered something in her language, a prayer. Or maybe a warning. They rode through the growing darkness. The cowboy and the Apache woman, bound by something neither could explain. The trail twisted through narrow canyons and dry riverbeds. The moon climbing higher with every step. Luke could feel her fear like a pulse in the air. He'd seen fear before, the kind that comes from gunmen or bounty hunters. But this was different. Older. Wilder. After a while, he said quietly, "You got a name, ma'am?" She hesitated before replying. "Nayeli." "Pretty name," Luke said. "Means something, don't it?" She nodded. "It means I am loved." Luke smiled faintly. "Reckon that's a good thing to be out here." But before she could answer, a sound cut through the wind, hooves, distant but closing fast. Luke's head snapped back. "We got company." Nayeli's face went pale. They found us. From behind them, 3 riders appeared, silhouettes against the silver moon. Their coats were dark, their hats pulled low. Luke recognized the look right away, bounty hunters. The kind who'd sell their own blood for gold. One of them shouted, "Drop the box, cowboy. Ain't your fight." Luke looked at Nayeli. She shook her head fiercely. "If they take it, my people die." Luke's hand drifted to his revolver. "Then I guess it's my fight now." The night exploded with gunfire. Muzzles flashed in the dark, echoing through the canyon. Luke fired back, his aim steady, knocking one rider clean off his horse. The other 2 split apart, circling. Dust rose like ghosts around them. Nayeli crouched low behind a rock, clutching the crate as bullets sparked off the stone beside her. Luke shouted, "Get to the rocks. Go." She ran, dragging the crate with her, while Luke covered her with his revolver. One of the bounty hunters came charging in, shotgun blazing. Luke turned, rolled, and fired once. The man tumbled from his horse and didn't move again. When the gunfire stopped, silence filled the canyon once more, broken only by the ragged sound of their breathing. Nayeli stared at him, astonished. "You could have left me." Luke holstered his gun. "Could have," he said. "But that ain't my style." They pressed on through the night until they found an old, half-collapsed cabin near a dry creek. Inside, Luke lit a small fire. The flickering light danced across the wooden walls, showing scars of old fights and forgotten memories. Nayeli sat near the crate, keeping it close. Luke poured her a bit of water from his canteen. "Here," he said. She took it, her hands trembling. "You should not help me, cowboy. This path, it curses those who walk it." Luke looked at her steadily. "Darlin', my life's been cursed for a long time. One more won't hurt." She met his eyes then, really met them, and for the first time, he saw the pain behind her strength. "That box," she whispered, "it holds the bones of my ancestors. The ones who were killed by men like those who chased us. If I don't return them to the mountain, their spirits will never rest." Luke nodded slowly, understanding more than he let on. "Then we'll get it there. Come sunrise, we ride." She frowned. "Why would you risk your life for this?" He stared into the fire. "Because once, someone helped me when I didn't deserve it. Maybe this is me paying it forward." Outside, the wind picked up, howling through the desert like the cries of the dead. The fire flickered, shadows crawling up the walls. Nayeli shivered slightly, and Luke tossed another log into the flames. "Get some rest," he said softly. "I'll keep watch." But as the night deepened, Luke couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. From somewhere out beyond the cabin walls, faint footsteps crunched against the sand, slow, careful, deliberate. He gripped his revolver again, every nerve alert. The sound came closer. Then, silence. Luke waited, holding his breath. A whisper brushed through the air, low and hollow, like a voice carried on the wind. "You should not have helped her." Luke turned sharply, gun raised, but there was no one there. Only the dark desert staring back at him through the broken door. He lowered his weapon slowly, his jaw tightening. Whatever they had carried, whatever lay inside that long wooden crate, it was more than bones. Much more. And by dawn, Luke Carter would learn the terrible truth of what he'd just agreed to carry. The night in the desert stretched longer than it should have. Luke Carter sat by the dying fire, his revolver resting across his knee, his eyes fixed on the dark outline of the crate. The flames cast strange shadows across it, long, twisting shapes that seemed to move even when the fire didn't. Outside, the wind moaned like a voice calling from far away. Nayeli slept lightly near the corner, wrapped in a blanket of woven hide. But even in her sleep, her body trembled. Luke's instincts told him something was wrong. Every fiber in him wanted to toss the crate off a cliff and ride away. But something else, maybe his old sense of duty, maybe something deeper, kept him there. When dawn broke, the desert glowed gold again, and the air was sharp with morning cold. Luke stirred the embers back to life and poured the last of his coffee into a tin cup. Nayeli woke slowly, her eyes heavy with dreams. It spoke again last night, didn't it? She asked quietly. Luke froze. You heard it too? She nodded. The spirit within is angry. It doesn't like outsiders. Luke exhaled, rubbing his face. Well, that makes two of us. She stood and looked toward the distant mountains, the sacred ones that rose sharp and blue in the distance. We have to move before the sun climbs high. The path will be dangerous. Luke kicked dirt over the fire and packed up. After what we went through last night, dangerous don't scare me much anymore. They mounted up and began riding again. The long crate tied across the back of Luke's horse. The trail twisted through narrow canyons where the light barely touched the ground. Hawks circled high above them, and once Luke thought he saw movement along the ridges, riders keeping their distance. He said nothing. Hours passed in silence. Then, as they reached the mouth of a dry ravine, Nayeli suddenly stopped her horse. Wait. Luke turned. What is it? She slid off and knelt by the ground, touching the dust. Tracks, she said softly. 6 horses. Fresh. They're following us. Luke's eyes hardened. Bounty hunters didn't die off last night after all. Nayeli's face turned grim. They want what's inside. They think it's gold. Luke spat. Figures. Men'll chase gold before they chase God. They rode faster now, pushing hard toward the mountains. But by midday, the sun was merciless, and their canteens were nearly empty. The trail narrowed into a steep climb where jagged rocks tore at the hooves. Dust choked the air, and the crate rattled against the saddle. At one point, the strap loosened, and the crate slipped. Luke jumped off and caught it just in time, his muscles straining under the weight. Damn thing's heavier than sin. He grunted. Nayeli ran to help him. Be careful. Don't drop it. Luke steadied it, sweating under the desert heat. You know, for a sacred relic, it sure don't make itself easy to carry. She gave him a small, tired smile. That's why I said, it's too long and hard. My people believe the spirits test the ones who carry them. Luke wiped his brow. Well, tell your spirits they're overdoing it. Despite the tension. The words made her laugh softly, the first time he'd heard her laugh. It was short, uncertain. But it felt like a sliver of sunlight cutting through storm clouds. By late afternoon, they reached a plateau overlooking the valley. Far below, Luke could see the faint dust trails of riders, 6 of them. Just as Nayeli had said. They're gaining, he muttered. Nayeli looked toward the mountain peak. The sacred cave is close, 1 hour, maybe less. If we reach it, they can't follow. Luke tightened his hat. Then we'd better make that hour count. They pushed on, every step echoing against the canyon walls. The sky turned orange again, the same color it had been when they first met. But before they could reach the cave, a rifle cracked behind them. A bullet sliced through the air and hit the ground near Luke's horse. Down, he shouted. They dove behind the rocks. More shots followed, ricocheting around them. The bounty hunters had arrived. Luke fired back. His revolver roaring in his hand. Dust exploded where bullets struck. One rider went down, but the others spread out, flanking from both sides. Nayeli clutched the crate. We can't fight them all. Luke reloaded. You get that box to your mountain. I'll hold them off. No, she cried. You'll die. He looked at her, his face calm but fierce. Lady, I've been dead inside a long time. Go. Reluctantly, tears in her eyes. She dragged the crate up the slope while Luke laid down cover fire. He shot clean, fast, and precise, every bullet buying her seconds. 2 of the bounty hunters fell, but the others kept coming. One bullet grazed Luke's shoulder. Another shattered the rock beside his face. Still, he stood his ground. Finally, Nayeli disappeared over the ridge. Luke, bleeding and out of ammo, ducked behind a boulder, breathing hard. Then, silence again. When he looked up, the last of the bounty hunters was gone. Only the wind remained, whispering through the stones. He staggered up the hill, his vision swimming. When he reached the top, he saw Nayeli kneeling before a wide cave entrance surrounded by stone carvings. She had placed the crate at the mouth of the cave and was chanting softly in Apache. As Luke approached, she looked up, and for the first time, she smiled fully. "It's done," she whispered. "They're free now." But before he could speak, the air around them began to shift. A low hum vibrated through the ground. The crate lid creaked open, not by her hands, but by something unseen. Inside was not just bone. There was a faint blue light glowing from within, swirling shapes like mist. Like faces. Spirits. Luke stepped back, his heart pounding. "What in God's name?" Nayeli bowed her head. "Not God," she said softly. "The ancestors." The light grew brighter, spilling out across the cave floor. For a moment, Luke saw figures, warriors, women, children, all fading into the air like smoke carried by the wind. One of them paused before him, its shape almost human. It raised a spectral hand, touched his chest, and whispered something he couldn't understand. Then it was gone. The desert fell silent again. The crate lay empty. Nayeli looked at him, tears on her cheeks but peace in her eyes. "They have forgiven. They can rest." Luke nodded slowly, feeling something lift inside him, the same weight he'd carried for years. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was redemption. Out there in the sacred mountain, both felt the same. But the peace didn't last long. Behind them, the last surviving bounty hunter appeared, rifle raised. "Step away from it," he shouted. Luke turned slowly, his gun empty, his body weak. The men took aim. But before he could fire, a wind like a storm burst from the cave. The spirit light flared again, wrapping the hunter in swirling blue flame. He screamed once, and vanished into dust. Then all was quiet. Luke blinked, half in awe, half in fear. Nayeli whispered, "They protect us now." He looked at her and gave a slow, tired grin. "Remind me never to argue with your ancestors." They buried the empty crate under the sacred stones, marking the spot with a carved feather. As the sun set for the second time in their journey, the desert glowed gold and red once more. Luke sat on a rock, watching the horizon burn. "So what now?" he asked. Nayeli looked at the sky. "Now, I return home. My people will know peace again." He nodded. "And me?" She smiled gently. "You go where the wind takes you, cowboy. But the spirits, they will remember you." He chuckled softly. "I'll take that as a blessing." They shared a long silence before she mounted her horse. She looked back once. "Thank you, Luke Carter. The desert won't forget what you did." Then she rode away into the fading light. Luke stood there until she was gone, the wind tugging at his coat, carrying with it the whispers of the past. He turned toward his horse, patted its neck, and climbed into the saddle. As he rode down from the mountain, the sky darkened again, and a single star shone over the desert, bright, steady, and alone. Luke smiled beneath his hat. "Guess we did all right, old friend," he murmured to his horse. "Guess we did all right." The desert swallowed him up again. The sound of hoofs fading into the wind. Just another cowboy carrying his past through the endless plains, chasing redemption under an unforgiving sun. And somewhere in the echo of that vast silence, the spirits of the Apache whispered his name, not as an enemy, but as a brother.